How many times did you mean to pick up your phone today? Not how many times you did pick it up, how many times you meant to. How many of those sessions were on purpose, with a goal, with a reason you could name out loud? You probably cannot answer that. And that is not a character flaw. That is a design choice someone made for you about 20 years ago. There is a feature on your phone, on every app you use, that you have never once thought about. You have never named it. You have never questioned it. But it is running right now underneath everything, like plumbing. It is the reason you opened Instagram to check one notification and looked up 40 minutes later. The reason you went to bed at 11 and it was suddenly 1:15. The reason your thumb keeps moving even after your brain has stopped caring about what it sees. The feature is called infinite scroll. And before we get to who built it, you need to understand what it actually does to you. Because this is not a story about an app. This is a story about what happens when you remove a single, tiny friction point from the human decision-making process. Before infinite scroll, every website had pages. Page 1, page 2, page 3. You clicked a button to see more. That sounds like nothing. That sounds like a minor inconvenience someone solved. But that click was doing something your brain depended on. Every time you hit the bottom of a page, your brain received a signal, a completion signal. You finished a unit of content. And in that tiny gap between the last item on page 4 and the decision to click to page 5, something happened. You decided. Your conscious mind woke up for a fraction of a second and asked, "Do I want more of this?" And sometimes the answer was no. Sometimes you closed the tab. Sometimes you remembered you had something else to do. That fraction of a second decision was the only thing standing between you and the machine. Researchers call it unit bias. Your brain is wired to complete units. Read to the end of the chapter. Finish the plate. Get to the bottom of the page. Pagination gave you a unit. Your brain tracked it, completed it, and then asked permission to start the next one. That is how human cognition is supposed to work. Chunk, complete, decide. Chunk, complete, decide. Someone deleted the decide part. In the 1950s, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner ran experiments on reinforcement schedules. He tested 4 different patterns of delivering rewards to animals. One pattern produced behavior so persistent, so resistant to stopping, that it became the backbone of every slot machine ever built. Variable ratio reinforcement. Reward arrives after an unpredictable number of responses. Not every third pull of the lever, not every 10th. Sometimes the second, sometimes the 47th. The animal never knows when the next reward is coming. Skinner found that this schedule produces the highest response rate and the hardest behavior to extinguish. The animal will keep pressing the lever long after the rewards have stopped entirely. Your social media feed is a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. Most posts are boring. Some are funny. A few are genuinely interesting. You never know which scroll will deliver the good one, so you keep scrolling. And here's where the engineering gets sinister. The old page system gave you a built-in exit. Every page break was a moment where your prefrontal cortex could intervene and say, "That is enough." Infinite scroll deleted that moment. There is a concept in psychology called a stopping cue. It is any signal that tells your brain a task is done. The bottom of a bag of chips, the end of an episode, the last page of search results. Your brain needs these signals to transition from one activity to the next. Remove the stopping cue, and the brain does not know when to stop. It is not that you choose to continue. It is that the choice itself has been removed from the interface. This was understood decades before anyone built an app. In 1971, a Nobel laureate economist and cognitive scientist named Herbert Simon wrote that a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. He identified the core trade-off. Information and attention are a zero-sum pair. The more information you pour over someone, the less attention they have for anything else. That was 1971, 53 years before TikTok. Remember that name. Jeff Raskin. He was a computer scientist who launched the Macintosh project at Apple in 1979. He spent his entire career arguing one thing, that technology design must serve human cognition, not exploit it. In 2000, he published a book called The Humane Interface, and its central thesis was that good design respects how the human brain actually works. Jeff Raskin died of pancreatic cancer on February 26, 2005. He had a son. Remember that name, because in about 10 minutes you are going to understand why it matters. That son grew up trained in what Jeff called cognetics, the ergonomics of the mind, the principle that design should amplify human capability, never manipulate it. That was the family business. That was dinner table conversation. In 2005, months after his father died, that son co-founded a company called Humanized, a user interface design firm. Its explicit mission was to continue his father's legacy. 1 year later, in 2006, that 22-year-old son was working on a search result display problem. Pages of results. Clicking through them felt clunky. He wanted to make it smoother, so he invented infinite scroll. He removed the page break. He made content load automatically as you reached the bottom. No click, no decision point, no pause. The content just kept coming. He was optimizing for ease of use. That is all he thought he was doing. His name is Aza Raskin, and he built the single most effective attention trap in the history of human-computer interaction, using the principles his father spent a lifetime warning against. That was 2006, and it is still happening right now. Within 5 years, infinite scroll was everywhere. Facebook adopted it, Twitter adopted it, Pinterest, Tumblr, LinkedIn. When Instagram launched on October 6, 2010, co-founded by Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger, both former students of BJ Fogg at the Stanford Persuasive Technology Lab, infinite scroll was baked in from day one. By 2012, Facebook paid $1 billion for Instagram. Not for the photos, for the attention, for the scroll. In 2009, a software engineer named Lauren Brichter added another piece. He invented pull to refresh for the Twitter app. You pull down on the screen and release it to load new content. The physical gesture is structurally identical to pulling a slot machine lever. Brichter told The Guardian in 2017 that he regrets it. He said smartphones are addictive, pull to refresh is addictive, and when he was building these things, he was not mature enough to think about what he was doing. So now you have infinite scroll removing your stopping cue. You have pull to refresh giving you a slot machine lever. You have variable ratio reinforcement, keeping your dopamine system locked in anticipation. And on top of all that, you have a social validation loop. Likes and comments deliver what Sean Parker, the first president of Facebook, described as a little dopamine hit every once in a while. You know what Sean Parker said at an Axios event in Philadelphia on November 8, 2017? He said the thought process behind building Facebook was all about one question. How do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? He said the people who built it, himself, Zuckerberg, Kevin Systrom, all of them, understood what they were doing consciously, and they did it anyway, and they knew. Chamath Palihapitiya, Facebook's former VP of user growth, stood in front of a Stanford Business School audience that same month and said the short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops they created are destroying how society works. He said he feels tremendous guilt. He does not let his own children use social media. These are not critics. These are the people who built the machine. And every single one of them waited until after they cashed out to say a word. But before any of them went public, one person tried to sound the alarm from the inside. In February 2013, a Google employee named Tristan Harris wrote a 141-slide internal presentation. He called it a call to minimize distraction and respect users' attention. The deck circulated inside Google and was seen by tens of thousands of employees. It laid out exactly how tech companies were exploiting psychological weaknesses for engagement. You know what happened after that? Nothing. No policy was rewritten. No feature was pulled. The presentation was seen by tens of thousands of employees and produced zero changes to how Google designed its products. Harris left Google in December 2015. He co-founded a nonprofit called Time Well Spent, which would later become the Center for Humane Technology, the same organization Aza Raskin would join 3 years later. Two men. One who tried to warn a company from inside and was ignored. One who invented the feature and did not understand what he had done until it was too late to take it back. But the testimony that matters most came years later, in a courtroom. In 2024, in the case of New Mexico versus Meta, Aza Raskin took the witness stand as a fact witness. The man who invented infinite scroll was asked to explain, under oath, what his invention does. He used an analogy. He said, imagine your wine glass refilled itself without you noticing. You would drink far more than you intended because your brain never gets the signal that the glass is empty. The bottom of the glass is a stopping cue. Your brain depends on it. Infinite scroll, he told the jury, removes that stopping cue from every app on your phone. Then he said 5 words that should be tattooed on the wall of every tech company boardroom. This is not a fair fight. The inventor of the feature, testifying against the companies that used it, telling a jury that the thing he made at 22 years old traps users in endless scrolling, that it was never a fair fight between a human brain and a system designed to exploit exactly how that brain processes reward. You know what he did after that? He went back to running the Center for Humane Technology, the nonprofit he co-founded with Tristan Harris in 2018, dedicated to realigning technology with human interests. He also runs the Earth Species Project, which he co-founded with Britt Selvatel in 2017, using AI to decode animal communication. $17 million in grants by October 2024, pointed at talking to whales instead of trapping humans. He has spent the last 8 years trying to undo what he built in one afternoon in 2006. But that afternoon produced something that cannot be undone by a nonprofit. Because by the time Aza Raskin started apologizing, the data was already in. Frances Haugen, a former Facebook product manager, leaked internal company research to the Wall Street Journal in September 2021. The documents were devastating. Facebook's own researchers found that Instagram makes body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls. That 13.5% of UKK teen girls said Instagram worsened their suicidal thoughts. That 17% of teen girls reported their eating disorders got worse after using Instagram. And they knew. Facebook had the data. They measured the harm. They named the mechanism. They quantified the affected population, and they continued operating without making design changes. Infinite scroll is the delivery system. It is the mechanism that keeps those teen girls on the platform long enough for the damage to accumulate. Not because they choose to stay, because the stopping cue that would let them choose to leave has been engineered out of the experience. A study published in ACMCHI found that when Netflix disabled autoplay, another infinite content feature, viewers watched an average of 17 fewer minutes per session. 17 minutes. Just from restoring one stopping cue on one platform. Multiply that across every app on every phone for every user on Earth. That is what was taken. That was 2021. It is still happening right now. Jonathan Haidt, a social psychologist at NYU, published The Anxious Generation in March 2024. He documented what happened to American teenagers between 2010 and 2018. The exact years Infinite Scroll went from a clever design trick to the default interface of every social media platform on Earth. Anxiety among U.S. adolescents increased 134%. Depression increased 106%. Generation Z, born after 1995, was hit hardest. The generation that never knew a phone without Infinite Scroll. In 2022, Gallup found U.S. teenagers spend an average of 4.8 hours per day on social media. Girls average 5.3 hours. Boys 4.4 hours. Back in 2016, 51% of American teenagers told Gallup they felt addicted to their phones. 3 out of 5 parents agreed. And then came TikTok, the purest expression of Infinite Scroll ever built. As of 2023, the average adult spends 55 minutes and 48 seconds per day on TikTok. Children under 18 average 95 to 113 minutes per day. The average user opens the app 19 times per day. The average session is nearly 11 minutes. That is not people choosing to spend their time that way. That is people whose stopping cue has been removed. And that's just one company. Every major platform runs the same system. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Reddit. The feature Aza Raskin built for a search results page in 2006 became the industry standard because it does one thing better than any other design pattern ever invented. It increases time on platform. Time on platform is the metric. Time on platform is revenue, and Infinite Scroll delivers it. Aza Raskin sat in a hotel room in Helsinki and did the math. He estimated that across all platforms, Infinite Scroll wastes 200,000 human lifetimes per day. 200,000 lifetimes. Every day. Not the time people choose to spend online. The difference between how long they intended to spend and how long the interface kept them there. The gap between what you wanted and what was taken. Here's what you need to understand about why knowing all of this will not save you. Your brain has been physically changed by this technology. The dopamine system in your nucleus accumbens does not primarily respond to receiving a reward. It responds to anticipating one. Dopamine spikes during the anticipation phase before the reward arrives, creating a compulsive urge to seek the next potentially rewarding stimulus. When that reward is unpredictable, the way content in an infinite feed is unpredictable, the dopamine system enters a hyper-engaged state. This is the exact neurological pattern Skinner documented 70 years ago. It is the pattern behind every slot machine. And it is the pattern your phone activates every time you open an app with an infinite feed. This is not a metaphor. This is not an analogy. Your nucleus accumbens does not know the difference between a slot machine and a TikTok feed. The reinforcement schedule is identical. And here is the part that should scare you. Variable ratio reinforcement produces behavior that is, in Skinner's precise clinical language, resistant to extinction. That means once the pattern is established, removing the reward does not quickly stop the behavior. The animal keeps pressing the lever. The person keeps scrolling. Your thumb moves before your conscious mind has made a decision. That is not a habit. That is conditioned behavior operating below the level of conscious control. And it was installed in your nervous system by a design feature you have never once thought about. Every scroll trains the circuit a little deeper. Every session reinforces the loop. The average American spends 2 hours and 21 minutes per day on social media, 6 hours and 40 minutes of total screen time. Day after day, year after year, the pathway gets stronger. You cannot think your way out of a dopamine loop. Knowing about Infinite Scroll does not deactivate the neurological response any more than knowing about gravity lets you float. That is the cruelest part of the design. Awareness is not a cure. You can watch a documentary about it, read an article about it, listen to a 20-minute video about it. Your nucleus accumbens does not care what your prefrontal cortex has learned. The next time you pick up your phone, the loop fires anyway. Aza Raskin understood this when he testified. He was not just apologizing for a bad design choice. He was describing a mechanism that alters the physical wiring of human attention at a population scale, a mechanism he built at 22, following his dead father's design philosophy, except for the one part that mattered most. His father wrote that technology should respect human cognition. Aza removed the one friction point that let human cognition function. In 2020, The Social Dilemma premiered on Netflix. The documentary featured both Tristan Harris and Aza Raskin. It reached 100 million viewers in 190 countries across 30 languages. The word doom scrolling entered the dictionary that same year, right as a global pandemic locked billions of people in their homes, with nothing to do but stare at an infinite feed. The pandemic did not create the behavior. It just removed the last competing activities. In January 2026, the French National Assembly voted 116 to 23 to ban social media for children under 15. In March 2026, 2 landmark social media verdicts in the United States reshaped legal accountability for platform design choices. 20 years after a 22-year-old solved a pagination problem, courts and governments are trying to contain the damage. Aza Raskin posted on Twitter in 2019 that one of his lessons from Infinite Scroll was that optimizing something for ease of use does not mean it is best for the user or humanity. He figured that out 13 years after he shipped it. 200,000 lifetimes per day. You opened your phone this morning. You will open it again tonight. Somewhere between those two moments, your thumb will start moving on its own, scrolling through a feed that has no bottom, looking for a reward that comes on no predictable schedule, in a session that will last longer than you intended. And you will not remember the moment you decided to keep going. Because that moment was removed from the design in 2006 by the son of the only man who could have told him why it mattered. So here's the question I am going to leave you with, and I am not going to answer it. If the man who invented it is spending his life trying to undo it, if the people who built the platforms around it are standing in front of audiences saying they feel tremendous guilt, if the internal research proves the harm, if the courts are issuing verdicts, if entire countries are banning children from using it, and it is still on every phone, in every app, running right now as you listen to this, who exactly is supposed to stop it?